The CDC's advisory committee recommended the RotaShield for universal use before it was even approved by the FDA. What would possess you to recommend it for every infant in America before you even knew if the fucking safety tests were approved? There's been a lot of talk in the news lately about vaccines. How safe are they? In what manner are they tested? Are they truly tested against an inert placebo? Who approves them? What bodies? FDA, CDC? What exactly is going on there? So I thought that this report from the year 2000, Committee on Government Reform, the U.S. House conducted an investigation. It says here, conflicts of interest in vaccine policy making. And I'd stick around because this one's pretty good. So the two regulatory bodies that approve vaccines are the FDA's VRBPAC and the CDC's ACIP. So it would go to the FDA first, and then they would approve the vaccine. And then it would go to the CDC's ACIP body to decide its recommendations for children, pregnant women, how old, how young, how many doses, all that kind of thing. So it's cool how they do this. Off the top, we're basically gonna get the end before the beginning, but that's fine. So these are the major problems that were identified. The CDC routinely grants waivers from conflict of interest rules to every member of its advisory committee. So even if financial conflicts are identified, typically they're granted waivers so that they can vote and participate anyways. The advisory committee members that are actually not allowed to vote, that does happen a few times, due to their financial conflicts, they're still allowed to participate in the committee deliberations and advocate specific positions. And there's some fun quotes that I have later on, direct quotes from a few of the members. The chairman of the CDC's ACIP until recently owned 600 shares of stock in Merck, a pharmaceutical company with an active vaccine division. So this particular investigation, they were looking into the rotavirus vaccine after it had caused like a few hundred cases of intussusception. It's like this thing that destroys like children's intestines. One kid died and a lot of others got sick. But he had 600. The chairman had 600 shares in a pharmaceutical company that was developing a different version of the same vaccine. You tell me some people don't think that's a conflict. That sounds like one to me. Members of the CDC's committee often fill out incomplete financial disclosure statements and are not required to provide the missing information by CDC ethics officials. Okay. 4 out of 8 CDC ACIP members who voted to approve the guidelines for the rotavirus vaccine had financial ties to the companies that were developing different versions of the vaccine. I'll scratch your back, you scratch mine. That's probably what's going on. And then 3 out of the 5 FDA VRBPAC members who voted to approve the rotavirus vaccine had financial ties to companies that were developing different versions of the vaccine. You make up your mind on if you think that qualifies as a conflict or not. Obviously, there's a lot more you can read here. I just wanted to give you a little bit of a background. Childhood mortality caused by rotavirus is relatively low in the US. Estimates of deaths resulting from complications of rotavirus range from 20 to 100 deaths per year. Okay, so it's not nothing. Most of the time, the virus causes like diarrhea, and then the kids pretty much die from dehydration after they lose all their fluids. So it goes on to say many deaths and hospitalizations may be prevented by the aggressive use of oral rehydration therapy, which is underused. The rotavirus vaccine fact sheet was updated on February 2nd, 2000 that indicates that the FDA and CDC confirmed the association between RotaShield, that's the vaccine, and intussusception. So they knew that this side effect was present in the shots given. Okay, so these were the issues that they found with the FDA's VRBPAC. We'll address the ACIP a little bit in a second, but these are the main issues. At the meeting, several members raised concerns about adverse effects. This is a direct quote from Dr. Fleming. And as a result, I would ask the FDA to work with the sponsor to further quantitate what these serious side effects are, specifically the adverse effects and inducing hospitalizations. I still don't feel like I have a good grasp of what that is at this point. He goes on and says all that. He proceeded to vote for the approval recommendation, despite him acknowledging that there are serious side effects and I really don't understand them. But I do vote yes, because I have stock in a company that's bringing a different version of the vaccine forward soon, and I'd like you to vote the same way for mine. Conflicts of interest of VRBPAC members. They're everything from this lady, Patricia Ferreri. She owned $20,000 of stock in Merck. They call it an affected company. This is basically like another pharmaceutical company that is either developing a similar version of the product, or just because it's because it's in the field in such a close way, they call it an affected company. This lady, Caroline Hall, her employer had received NIAID monies for a rotavirus vaccine, almost $10 million that she was working on. This lady, she had a contract with Wyeth, which is the company that produced the rotavirus vaccine that's being investigated in this investigation. $255,000 for a couple years. She was studying other vaccines at the time, but this was 2 years after the fact, and she had already received a $250,000 grant. It goes on. This one caught my eye. Timing of the proceedings. A particularly troubling aspect of the deliberations on the RotaShield vaccine is the sequence of events. The ACIP committee voted to recommend universal vaccinations for infants before the FDA licensure had even been passed for the vaccine. So before it had even been approved and the safety tests verified and signed off on, the CDC was like, "Yo, every infant needs this vaccine." I mean, what would possess you to recommend it for every infant in America before you even knew if the fucking safety tests were approved? What? Money would have you do that. That's just one crazy theory. That's one crazy fucking theory. These are the problems identified with the ACIP. So those were the few. I only addressed a couple of them. Please go and read this document. You'll find out a lot more. But these are the full problems with the ACIP. So the members did not fully disclose the conflicts of interest. It says here, a guy here disclosed up to 5 reviews of medical legal cases, but failed to disclose who hired her or how much she was paid. One doctor failed to fill out a new financial disclosure form each year, as required. So, I mean, he fills one out from 10 years ago. He's like, "Oh, yeah, I mean, sure, I bought a bunch of stock and I made some big money moves, but yeah, I mean..." They go on. One member disclosed that he is a consultant to Merck, but didn't disclose whether or not he received any money for his services. It says remuneration, but whatever. Okay, so a couple more there. Every member of the ACIP is granted a waiver for the entire year. Okay, yeah, so we find financial ties and conflicts, but there's waiver forms to allow you to still enter the deliberations and still vote on the upcoming vaccines. ACIP members are allowed to vote on vaccine recommendations even when they have financial ties to drug companies developing related or similar vaccines. So, and then this is Dr. John Maudlin. This is the chairman of the ACIP. We mentioned it a second ago, but owns 600 shares of stock in Merck. Serves on their immunization advisory board. Was the chairman of the rotavirus working group. Voted yes on 8 different matters pertaining to the ACIP's rotavirus statement, including recommending routine use and for inclusion in the VFC program. I think that's for the one that recommends it for all children. Paul Offit, you've probably seen him in the news and media, but he sat on the ACI, still does I think, on the ACIP board. He shares the patent on a rotavirus vaccine in development by Merck, received a $350,000 grant from him, began his tenure in ACIP in 1998. Out of 4 votes pertaining to ACIP's rotavirus sim, he voted yes 3 times. He's a long time, he's a 30-year vaccine insider, researcher, developer. You can best believe if something comes up, he's voting yes on it. Members who are not allowed to vote on a recommendation due to financial conflicts are allowed to fully participate in the discussion leading up to a vote. And so it's like, okay, even if you thought that wasn't impactful, this is a direct quote taken from the transcript by one of the members. Here, he said he feels very privileged to be able to participate in a discussion that he cannot vote on. Hopefully, that perhaps what I will say will influence the people who can vote. So he thought it would make a difference, and I would venture to say that it does. We're just going to go ahead and skip. Like I said, this is a dope document. There's a lot more that I did not mention. But here's some of the conclusions. It is clear that the VRBPAC and the ACIP are dominated by individuals with close working relationships with the manufacturers of vaccines. It is also clear that the CDC's and FDA's repeated waivers of conflict of interest rules have contributed to an environment where ethical considerations and appearances of impropriety are not given the weight that they deserve. Okay. A thorough review of the VRBPAC and ACIP's consideration of the rotavirus vaccine found a flawed process that led to a poor decision. Committee members with financial ties to the manufacturer of the vaccine and producers of competing vaccines were given waivers to participate in the decision-making process. We mentioned that. Legitimate concerns about serious side effects and a lack of information were swept aside. I would say that that's what happened. The CDC's advisory committee recommended the RotaShield for universal use before it was even approved by the FDA. The end result was that a product was placed on the market that had to be withdrawn within 1 year because it was injuring the children it was meant to protect. This is one investigation in 1 year about one vaccine. But I need you to understand that a lot of the issues that this government body found with how vaccines are even approved to begin with are still present today. There are still industry heads and people who are heavily invested in vaccine development that are approving vaccines, similar versions of the same vaccines. They still don't have to report their financial conflicts of interest. They're still granted waivers. Basically every issue that was found in this report exists in some form today for all vaccines. I'll stop it there. There's a lot more that could be said, but thank you for watching.